call this meeting to order. I'd like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that we're gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Inca and Silk people, and again, I apologize for my pronunciation. I'll get better and better as time goes on. We have public input, and we also have a delegation, so that's not public input side to it. But is anyone here for public input? Okay.
Can I do public input? Just quickly? Or?
Yes. I think you're presenting tonight, though, are you not?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then yes, you can.
Oh, so is this about the petition?
Yeah.
Essentially, Your Worship, it's up to you if you want to take anything from them now or in new business item 9.
Okay. I was expecting to take the petition in the delegation. You've got a longer time frame for that?
Okay, I didn't know we were on for that too, so thank you.
Okay.
Whatever you like.
Thank you. We will move into 4.1, regular council meeting minutes on the 25th of January 2021. I need a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on 25th of January 2022 be adopted. Christopherson and White. And I understand that amendments are needed. Councillor Etchart, did you want to speak to it? You were the one that brought it up previously?
Well, I just noticed that we had one of the former councillors listed in there, but I think it's due to a system glitch where it's not removed in the previous name, that's all.
So we're going to amend these minutes then to remove his name from the document. Mr. Lewis?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, the system, I'm afraid, there's a deleted account which is tagged as being absent rather than no longer in the necessary user group, so I apologize for that inadvertent error. So I would suggest that you move the adoption of the minutes with the removal of any references to Mike Bangu from the votes.
Okay, and I was just going to say, we've got the right year 2021 on the agenda. We've got the right year on the minutes approval, which is 2022. On the agenda is 2021. But we are adopting January 25th, 2022.
2022.
With the amendments.
Correct.
Any other corrections or errors? All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. There is no public hearing, and now we move into our delegations. So now would be the time to come up with the petition.
Thank you. My name is Kate Harrison.
And can I have the mic turned on? Is the mic turned on?
It's on, Your Worship.
Hello.
Please just make sure you're speaking very closely into it.
Okay.
Hello. My name is Kate Harrison. I am representing a group from the clay banks on Fir Road in Collettville. You have a letter, I believe, that you have. Has everybody had a chance to look at it, or would you like me to read it?
If you want to read it, because our audience may not, our online audience may need the ear.
Okay, thank you. So,
can I ask you to take your mask off?
I would love to.
They can hear it better when you're, yeah.
Okay, so we live in the area above the clay banks of the Coldwater River, and the devastating floods of November 15th actually changed the flow of the Coldwater River. The river is now running directly against the clay banks below Fir Road. The erosion that this will lead to is threatening public and private property and structures. It is our understanding that the flooding eroded the land around the Middlesbrough Bridge, and that area will need to be repaired and fortified in order to support the new bridge. The river's new course is eroding the clay banks near the bridge, and it's not a matter of if, but when There will be damage to the land and roads in that area. Fir Road is in danger, not only from future potential flooding, but from regular seasonal high water and ice flows. We're asking that while the Middlesbrough Bridge is being repaired and the surrounding land being fortified, that the clay banks on the Coldwater River will also be protected in the way that is deemed most effective and environmentally responsible. The people of this neighborhood have invested in and support the City of Merritt. We ask that you use this opportunity to build back the resiliency of this community and protect the city's infrastructure around the clay banks, including but not limited to homes, City of Merritt structures, land, roads, bridges, water, sewer, power. The flooding of November 2021 was immediately devastating for so many people in the Merritt community, and we ask for your protection from the secondary damage that we feel is imminent. We request that erosion mitigation of the Coldwater River clay banks be part of the plan to build back Merritt Strong. I thank you. We have, being a teacher, I drew you a little map. So this, I know it's kind of far away, but this is where the main flow of the Coldwater used to be. I don't know if you've had a chance to go down and have a look yet, but it used to come here, and there was a few, tributaries and ponds and stuff down here, but none of this exists anymore. Now this is just a little bit of a pond, and the water is flowing straight, as I said, straight along the banks, which is pretty scary for us people who live here, and we know the power of water. There it is, there's our homes. And that's exactly what it looks like now. Thank you. And I have our neighbor's contact information. I think that's attached. And I noticed there was a very nice, what are you're going to vote now. I liked the statement that was up there, so thank you. And, are there any questions for me?
Anybody have any questions for
Kate?
Kate Harrison, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking this seriously. I think it's a great opportunity. There's already work going on, and
And it is coming up next on our agenda. So I thank you for your presentation. And I know you have a few residents with you.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize one of them from being in my office a few times. Can't recognize the other one. But yes, thank you. So we will move on to new business, and it's the matter of the petition 9.1, and it's what Kate was referring to earlier. So the ask is the council instruct the Director of Public Works and Engineering to research and consider potential ways to reinforce and protect the clay banks on the Coldwater River during the Middlesbrough Bridge reconstruction project.
So moved.
I saw a hand, I didn't hear a voice, but I've got Luck and Etcher. And Mr. Smith, could you help us with
First,
this?
I think this is absolutely something that we can explore. The only thing that I would recommend is that it be changed from Director of Public Works and Engineering to staff, just in case it's the recovery team that ends up doing it instead of Charlie particularly. I think the intent here is that it get researched, not who in particular is doing it. So I think if that were changed to staff, but it's a sensible approach and don't have any concerns from the staff side at exploring that option.
Okay, and Councillor Luck and Councillor White, Councillor Etcher, are you okay with that friendly amendment?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Etcher.
We're just waiting for the red light to come on. No, I think it's a valid concern. I think right now all of us are really concerned about bank safety, especially with what's happened in Frechette. And I know that over erosion in that area is a concern, and I think that if we don't do something, we'll see some, well, we could see heavy damage and erosion of the road and damage to homes. So I'm happy if we can move along with that section as well. Thanks.
And Councillor Lockyer.
Yeah, I'm very happy. Thank you, Mayor. I'm very happy to see this motion on the table. I think we've been working on this for 3+ years or more in this area here, and I think it's we've had a disaster here in Merritt, and I think this is a golden opportunity to be able to include this in some of the in the restoration that's going to be taking place and building back resiliency in our community. And I think Kate and the group has really pointed out something that, I know we've heard around the table, well, we're not in the business of protecting private property, but private property today, fur next week, and then time after that, that bank is just going to keep moving, as we know the way rivers are, and that's what we've been told many times by the Ministry of Environment. So I think that this is a really important and timely request and motion. I think it's, I'm going to fully support this, and I really look forward to see what staff bring forward to us to include this in restoration in the community. So it's, thank you very much for bringing this motion forward to council this time.
Councillor Christopherson.
Yes, I support the request, but I do have a concern that I would like the city to consider going down the road, is that when subdivisions and development occurs, that we take into account the lay of the land, and that we make sure that when residential areas go in, that we have the foresight to know to be able to look to the future to see whether the areas being built in are indeed wise to build in. So I'd just like that rider to be considered, that everybody wants to live along the riverbank and so on, but they're not always safe anymore, and we have to take into account the changing realities. Thank you.
We certainly did get our eyes opened in last November, and since the river has changed its course, this becomes worthwhile to look at considering potential ways to reinforce it. Mr. Smith.
I just wanted to add one comment to Councillor Christopherson's voice here, and that is that you will recall that in the official community plan that you've seen the draft of, admittedly there's changes that we're working on to accommodate some further flooding provisions, but in the existing plan we've got the new development permit areas that are set up to address these geotechnical hazards in particular. So those areas have been expanded to address some of the areas of known concern. And so that will primarily be how this is addressed, but we are exercising further authority as well through the building inspector in the interim. If there are concerns on that front, there's the city's been seeking the necessary support. So we're absolutely in agreement and mindful that we have to be considering these geotechnical concerns in the building and subdivision process. The other thing that, and this certainly doesn't require any amendment to the motion, but I do want to note, as it stands right now, this is tied to being part of the Middlesbrough Bridge reconstruction project. There is some chance, full disclosure, that gets decoupled and this ends up being researched, because we're doing a full floodplain design project right now, and it may, depending on if this can fit in with the bridge, or maybe this fits in as part of the whole floodplain design and being funded through another mechanism. So I also just want to make sure everybody knows there's no kind of firm guarantee that this will happen with the Middlesbrough project, but we can commit to doing the research for potentially including a project as part of the broader floodplain.
And there's also no guarantee that we will get funded for it, but the possibility of getting funded for it at this point in time is greater than it's ever been.
I'm not letting anybody get our hopes down on that one.
Yeah.
We'll come through. We will.
So no other questions, I've got to move her in a second. So the council instruct the staff to research and consider potential ways to reinforce and protect the clay banks on the Coldwater River during the Middlesbrough Bridge reconstruction project. And all in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Okay, 9.2, Silgo Conference and resolutions. Mr. Lois, the staff report, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This, of course, is the annual Southern Ontario Local Government Association Conference. So last year you submitted 2 resolutions to that. One of them was successfully adopted, first by SILGA and then by UBCM. That was about trying to involve local governments in setting standards for snow clearing. And then you also submitted another one which was rejected by SILGA and therefore didn't progress to UBCM about permitting the essentially private use of ATVs on municipal rights of way in order to allow them to do snow clearing for their neighbours on a non-commercial basis. But unfortunately, as I say, that one was rejected. So if any of you have any proposals for resolutions that you would like to see the city submit to SILGA this year, then you need to get them voted on by council prior to the 25th of February, which means that essentially if you have suggestions that you would like, you could bring them forward tonight if any of you have anything planned. Or alternatively, if you would like to spend the next about week and a half formulating things, suggesting them, obviously staff are more than happy to help you refine any language. And then that can be considered on the February 22nd meeting. That would be the last opportunity to do anything. Last year, I think you made a series of snow motions because that was the topical issue of the day for Merritt at the time. Obviously, this year, flooding would be the equivalent version of that. The one thing to be aware of with SILGA resolutions, and then going on to that UBCM resolutions, is they are supposed to be about regional natures, issues of a regional nature. And so simply Merritt-specific things, well, obviously they are things that we really want to push hard on at the pushing up to the provincial government level. They aren't necessarily SILGA appropriate, although they could well be, particularly if they're looking at, say, lobbying the province to change the funding structure that affects all local governments, or if you wanted to look at trying to build an alliance of local communities that feel there are issues they would like to address or deal with. So those are some things that you might like to be thinking of. As I say, it's possible some of you may have thought about this already, but if you haven't, then by all means, we're available to help support you in the next couple of weeks as you come up with ideas of what you might like to put forward to SILGA.
So in general, would the climate change issues on a bigger scale than just the city? Okay. So we will work independently and potentially bring something back on the 22nd. Unless anybody has anything right now that they're wanting to put on the agenda. And we haven't had any or many SILGA meetings over the last 3 years. What it usually happens is when we take something to UBCM, that the regional body usually looks it over and references it and approves it for UBCM, because at UBCM they look at whether or not your regional body has approved it or not. If not, it can pretty well get rejected right at the regional level. So.
I might have a little bit of in this time too, sitting on the board, so. Thank you.
A little bit of in. That's not like conflict, is it?
No. Let's see if we can promote whatever we can.
Okay, so seeing no resolutions right now, we'll wait till 22nd, or you will hear from staff in the meantime, I assume. And Mr. Anderson, are you just anxious for the next meeting, or do you have something for this one?
Oh, the next item, I thought.
Okay. Keener. He's a keener. Thank you very much. And we will move now to 9.3, 2022 capital early approval for Arena Condenser Tower. Mr. Anderson.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. What we want to bring forward here today, we'll talk about the process a little bit later on capital budget, operating budget, financial plan, and so forth. But what this report here covers is a early approval for an arena condenser tower. So a bit of a background on the situation that the city is in right now. We've got a 19-year-old condensing tower that is at the arena that surfaces the arena and also the curling rink as well. So during the 2021 budget process, we identified that as something that we should look at in 2023, and we did invest some money in repairing it. So there was quite a bit of repair made in 2021. However, this unit continues to leak badly and is at risk of failure. So staff is recommending that we move it up a year and replace this unit in 2022. So condenser suppliers provided our recreation director, Sky McEwen, with some estimates. It's about an 8-week turnaround between ordering the unit and having it delivered on site. And this work we would want to do when the ice is off the surfaces and make sure that it's completed by the time we need to resurface those facilities. The estimated cost to procure and install a condensing tower is about $175,000. We're hopeful that some costs could be saved by repurposing the tower or reusing the tower by sandblasting and painting, so we might be a bit under that, but if that's not reusable, we're looking for $175,000. Normally, as I said, this would go through our capital budgeting process. There was a few delays this year in capital budgeting, and as a result of some flooding. So we're looking to get this one approved early. We also are going to be bringing forward for the March 8th council meeting some additional early approval capital projects because we won't be ready at that time with a full list of capital. But this one just kind of snuck ahead of that list on the 8th because of the time required to get this kind of a unit in place. Funding for this would be through the general fund reserve and surplus balances. Normally you've got balances in your arena reserve and so forth. Our arena reserve doesn't have balances in it right now, but it would come from the general fund. Now it might be funded also through TNRD and through their community works gas tax. So we did get funding last year, as you recall, for the pickleball court, and this would be an ideal project to put forward to them, so we might be able to get some or most of it covered through TNRD. So the risks here, if this thing fails, obviously there could be cancellation of hockey and curling and other events in those facilities, and that could have an impact on the wellness of the community. The ask here then is that council provide approval in advance of the adoption of the 2022 to 2026 financial plan for staff to proceed with an RFP for the purchase and installation of a new condenser tower for the Nicola Valley Memorial Arena with an estimated cost of $175,000 to be funded through general fund reserves.
And we need a mover?
So moved.
Second. And a second. Christopherson and White. And Mr. McEwen, did you have anything to add to that?
I do not. That was
Okay.
all good. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Anderson?
I did want
Mr. Smith.
to add, because council has had some questions around the budgeting process generally, and outside of this process, there was one person who raised reservations of just about knowing what the pot is going to look like prior to making any expenditures, and so I thought that I would address that question to the group as a whole at this meeting. One of the major challenges for us, in addition to compiling what is functionally a whole lot of new projects that weren't necessarily on board, is because we have a responsibility to make sure that our budgets are balanced in the sense that we have to be able to cover everything we have through a reserve or expected income, where we have a number of disaster financial assistance projects where the 20% portion of that needs to be funded by the municipality. As it stands right now, we would need to be taking a massive chunk of reserves in order to cover that if we were to be putting out budget information today. We're hopeful, but we can't guarantee it, that we'll get some form of funding commitment for those portions of funds prior to bringing you the capital budget so that we can actually have a capital budget that has some non-flood related items on it. Otherwise, it's going to be a really weird year for you guys because it's primarily going to look like recovery projects with a whole series of capital amendments in the future if we can find funding from alternate sources. So we really do appreciate that there's some financial uncertainty for you as the decision makers right now. We're working to resolve that as quickly as we can, but we do anticipate that until there is some firm funding commitments from other levels of government, that we're going to be running pretty close to up to the line on budget preparation for this year. So just really do want you to know that it's not our intent to make your job tough on this one, but there's enough moving parts behind the scenes that you're not going to have the full picture when you make this decision, though we are confident that we can cover the costs, and it would just mean that perhaps other projects may end up coming off if things run tighter and we don't have funding. So.
And in terms of what Mr. Smith was saying regarding our amendments, if we do find that we can add more or have to take some off out of our budget once we move it, because May 15th we have to have a budget into the ministry. So after that point, it doesn't mean to say we can't spend or we can't add, but then we need the financial adjustment document and a whole lot of extra work for Mr. Anderson and his team. I'm Councillor Fair.
Thank you. I'm in favor of this motion. I just wanted to say that despite the fact that we've been thrown this giant curveball, which is going to make budgeting challenging, I think this is a very important and integral part of the community, and based on the risks that it's currently experiencing, it just makes sense to do it now. So that's all I just wanted to say. I'm confident that we'll figure out our budget as well as getting this done.
Councillor Christopherson.
Basically, I echo Councillor Fair's remarks. At a time when we've gone through so many difficulties with floods and COVID and everything else, our kids need this. Our community needs it, and we'll find a way. So I definitely support it.
Thank you. And Councillor Hitchard.
Well, I think we all seem to have the same thought that the arena and the ice rink is a necessary part of not only recovery for Merritt, for people recovering from flood, but also social recovery where people haven't been able to go anywhere. So if we get to have any kind of sense of normalcy, that we're really dependent on having the arena and the curling rink as recreation sites. So, and the fact that 8 weeks could, if there's any kind of supply chain delays, could end up being longer. My thought is order it now, because maybe it's 8 weeks, maybe it's 12 or 16 with all these delays that happen. And
positive.
And what happens is the price is higher next year. So yeah, I'd say approve it now so that we can have it in. So get on it. Thanks.
Out of the words of Councillor Etchard, get right on it.
Okay.
We know it's not emergent, but it is urgent, and for the same reasons that we've all said, that our community needs it. I'm going to ask the question.
Has it been moved and seconded, Your Worship?
Yeah.
Was it?
I think it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I missed that.
Christopherson and White, I think.
Thank you.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried? Good. Now we're on to notices of motion. Seeing none, I'll go to reports from council. Councillor Fair.
Thank you. I would like to take a moment, while this may not necessarily be a report, I wanted to recognize and thank the healthcare workers for going above and beyond throughout the pandemic, the ongoing pandemic. They've faced incredibly high patient volumes, exhaustion, staff shortages, waves of variants, mask and vaccine resistance, even protests. but they've shown focus, professionalism, and compassion throughout, and they continue to do so. I think they deserve a level of recognition and gratitude and reverence that also goes above and beyond.
Thank you. Councillor Wade.
I'd just like to report on the Hell or High Water fundraiser that is moving along like actually even faster and quicker than we were expecting, and people are coming out of the woodwork. We have 5 radio stations contact us today. Yeah, it's just incredible. So hopefully next week we'll have some big news, and I think this will be a huge fundraiser for all the communities.
And even that with the big news, it'll be a month before the event itself, which will still be hopefully even bigger by the time the event happens.
Yeah.
Awesome. Councillor Luck.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to give a big shout out to the agricultural community. Our community, so they had a little bit of a convoy this weekend, and I don't know if that's the right. I don't know.
Rally.
A rally. Sorry, I was going to say I don't know if that's the right word, but rally. Thank you. So really appreciate their efforts and bringing the awareness of a lot of people that were really hurting in the valley here, Nicola Valley, and it was really good to see them out there rallying. And they were peaceful. I don't think there was any bottles thrown or anything like that. It was very peaceful, and they just got out there and made their point that they're looking for funding to help get back. And, and agriculture is a very important piece of the Nicola Valley and our community here. And so we'll hope that it fell on the ears that needed to hear on that. They're going to be looking and getting a response from that. So thank you for all them for doing what they did.
Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to capital projects update. Mr. Henderson?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Full disclosure, this is not my strongest year. We did have, as Mr. Henderson said, a bit of a delay. Moving to the sanitary station is the only project that we're looking at. Did exceed the budget. However, with the combination of the bulk water station, we should have a good news story once we crunch these numbers a little bit more. But I think in the coming weeks we will have a good news story on those 2 combined projects. Cemetery expansion, that is complete of phase 1, and we will be hopefully looking to complete phase 2. Hydrovac replacement, which is a critical piece of equipment for the Public Works Department, that is complete as well. Unfortunately, Boat Street phase 2, we were unsuccessful on that grant application, but we will be hopefully successful on the next. Boat Street phase 2 design. So we do have the shelf-ready project for Boat Street phase 2.
Mr. Henderson, can I move you back to the Boat Street phase 2? Will you be doing, barring approval of the capital budget, will you be bringing Boat Street potholes into your operations this year?
110%. As we move through the capital plan as well, we will cover definitely the pothole repair on Boat Street. We really have to re-strategize how we didn't want to put in a huge overlay program on Boat Street if we were going to complete the construction in 2022. However, we are delayed on that project, obviously.
Thank you. And I need to interrupt you, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just want you to know that we really have kind of explored the gamut on this one, because even if we were to complete phase 2, that isn't the phase 3 portion that would run all the way to River Ranch, and so we are looking at other options that we can put in front of you, again, depending on what other projects go as part of this budget period. But that may include an overlay program, which you've heard us say before, Boat Street, what was it, 15 inches? 18 inches. It's seen many an overlay program in its day. It is time to move past overlay. It genuinely is. That being said, with the size of this project, with the other funding needs that we have right now, council is going to be in a position where if we aren't successful getting some funding very, very soon, you may be in the position where you need to pull the trigger on an overlay project. So we will put some options in front of you, but I can tell you we are all hoping that not only on the recovery side for flood infrastructure, we're very hopeful that Merritt is going to see a high degree of sympathy for general grant applications right now, and that things like Boat Street and others may get extra attention just because of the financial challenges that Merritt has been experiencing. Talking with funders generally, I think that will come into play. As you're probably aware, with federal infrastructure grants, they need to be recommended by the provincial government, and these are people we've worked very closely with over the last few months. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that the right opportunity arises, but you'll see a number of options depending on what other projects go.
I was hoping to hear something like that. Mr. Henderson, back to you.
So moving on to the Coldwater River Works design. Unfortunately, this project identified erosion areas along the Coldwater Trail. These designs, unfortunately, will not be able to be put into use. However, the good news is during the flood and our dike repair, we did tap those areas and reinforce them. So essentially, the design and the construction is complete due to the emergency works. The KVR pedestrian bridge, that was repaired, that was the erosion footing, so that is complete as well. Survey equipment to bring into the engineering team now, myself and the engineering technologist can now go out and survey our projects, so that is complete. Wastewater treatment plant master plan has seen a delay. So we are currently working on that and picking that back up, but due to the flooding, those engineers were actually brought on to staff to help us out with the flooding, and we will be picking that up next week.
And do we know if the ministry is looking at the potential for moving? Have we even put that in our plans? Mr. Smith?
There's been high-level discussions around the potential option for that. The issue is there's where we don't know what the dollars that are potentially available are. It's been nothing but, maybe that's something explorable. It would be an astronomically expensive project relative to a lot of other items, but so I don't know how much traction it's going to get, full disclosure, but I think that we would be remiss not to be bringing it up as part of the conversation. So we'll continue to do so, but if I'm reading the winds correctly, I don't know whether there's going to be a whole lot of appetite for funding that.
So all we need is 25, 30 million plus.
Maybe more.
To add to Mr. Smith, our gravity sewer mains all flow. I think fortifying would probably be, a better option. Relocating the wastewater treatment plant would essentially have to take all of the sewage and then have a master pump and facility to move. So it would be a very, very technical, expensive program.
Thank you.
Hydrant replacement, that is complete. That is our ongoing annual hydrant replacement. Our valve replacement, unfortunately, was not complete as well. So that will be carried forward. During the flood, we did identify a series of valves that will need replacement. That was a very large challenge during the flood to isolate the water system. On a good note, we have multiple identified now that we can replace. Our RFB crosswalk lights, that was complete, and we will probably see a pause on that project as we've placed 15 in the last 3 years, I believe. So we will monitor and identify other crosswalks that come up through service requests or Merritt Council or staff. If you are seeing a crosswalk is of concern, please relay that down to the Public Works and Engineering Department. Security cameras, this will be a carry forward. The delivery, or the order, it is not complete. It says waiting for delivery, and we had confirmation this week that just due to supply, they don't have what we were looking for. So we might postpone that to other years.
So 100% doesn't mean that it's actually completed, but the funds have been used towards the project, is that?
No, there's no funds or invoices yet, so
okay.
that's an error on my part, actually, that 100% there. Our new dump truck, so with supply chain and everything, this was a heavy challenge, but we do have a brand new dump truck with a sanding unit, underbody plow, and a articulating front plow as well. We're just working through the bugs through the last couple of weeks, so this is a great addition to the Public Works. UVT meters. Yes.
Can you explain what the articulating front plow does?
It moves side to side. The front plow could plow to the middle of the road now, is what that is. The underbody is not. The underbody is fixed, but the front plow does have the capabilities now of pushing to the center, maybe in some crucial areas. Obviously, the entire rest of our fleet does not articulate, but we will have one piece of equipment that does. UVT meters, these measure the UVT doses into our water system. However, due to the damage to Boat Park, we haven't installed those, so we still need some more time to fully commission those. A new SCADA computer. SCADA computer monitors all of our water system and sanitary system, so we've upgraded that computer. That is complete. Wastewater treatment plant platforms. These are just a safety item, essentially. They were awarded, however, they are ordered. They have not arrived. Flood restoration design. This is in regards to Rotary Park, and this will be a carry forward as well. And to what year will be the next question as well. Bridge repairs. This was in regards to Middleborough Bridge Center Pier. At that time, we had the structural engineer sign off on it. Unfortunately, it has closed.
And it was the other side that was the issue.
It was the center pier, which was the issue, which is still standing. So the engineers were correct.
Center pier was the issue in the flood. I think you guys are saying the same thing.
Yeah. Armstrong Street civil design, so another shelf-ready project, ready to be implemented when the time comes. Downtown washrooms, that was a successful grant application. And the West Merritt Active Transportation Plan, we're just currently working through design RFPs. Cleesby Street connection design, this is in between Colchetta and Coldwater, right near Fairleigh Park. This is designed and ready to go. Also another shelf-ready project as well. Pickleball courts, that was a very great project to be a part of. That is complete as well. Water utility master plan is a carry forward. It's a source water assessment that we're kind of currently picking back up just due to the floodings as well. There is a delay on that project. Water metering planning. We are at substantial completion. Merritt Council will see this on the agenda for the next meeting, so that will be up for discussion on that one. The fire hall expansion is complete as well, and Boat Street bus shelters for Boat Street Phase 1 were installed and completed.
Any questions for Mr. Henderson? No. Oh, I do. Councillor Fair.
Thank you. I've said this before, but I really appreciate this presentation. It just gives really good context of where we're headed and also all that's been accomplished. There's really a lot in here, and it's good to see that. I was curious about the the wastewater treatment plant unsuccessful grant application. I'm just curious about when that application went in and when we heard back on it. Is that recent, or was that prior to the flood, I'm assuming?
I believe that was back in September when it was denied. My mind is...
Yeah, I can provide a little bit of extra context. You guys may recall, we actually read this one as being probably a reach for the grant, but the province told us to apply for it anyways, because this is one of the, it was actually flood resiliency dollars that were going to be going towards this project. They ended up oversubscribed and ultimately said this doesn't quite fit exactly the program anyways. We thought we were going to be able to squeak you in, but they ultimately, we were unsqueaked. So I think that, yeah, we're doing this plan right now. If there's the potential as part of this broader flood work to say that this is a flood recovery cost, I'm not opposed to exploring that potential. I think we will explore that potential, but we'll see.
Thank you, and thanks for the memory refresher.
Anybody else have questions for Mr. Henderson? Well, thank you very much for the update. Muchly appreciated, and we know that your year has been completely disrupted. But you managed to carry or do a lot of them despite the year, so thank you for that. And congratulate your team because they've done an awesome job this year.
Very much.
Now, anything else on the capital projects? And seeing none, I'm going to move on to 12.2 timeline update on the 2022-2026 financial plan and 2022 tax rate bylaws. Mr. Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. I got a musical introduction, the sounds of it. Yes, it's been an impactful year all around here, and this presentation here today, or this information item for you, kind of gives you a bit of a background on what's happened since the good old days of November 1st when we had a meeting and talked about a financial plan that was going to be in front of you well in advance of today, and we would be moving along with a list of capital projects. So back in November we had met and we were moving along at a good pace, and everything else happened from that point on. So I'm not going to labor on that piece of it. I just want to go through some of the things on the second page there that have sort of impacted the timeline, and then at the end we'll go through the proposed timeline that's in place for 2022 here. So from the date of the flood on November 14th, 15th, obviously that took priority for our finance department, and it's been 3 months of working on that and getting back into the day-to-day functions here. Back then we had an interim audit that was scheduled for November 24th and 25th, and that got moved off, and that was completed in mid-January. Normally in that time frame, November, December, we're completing our year-end reconciliations, getting ready for the auditors, and that's been pushed off now to February here that we're working on that. We had an RFP for a DCC bylaw review that we wanted to get out in November because that was top priority, and of course that has been pushed to the side, but we are pretty close to getting that released here in February. Other RFPs and projects and those sort of things, I know Charlie can attest to. We had some big plans of getting stuff out there early in the year so that we could be on the top of the list when it came to contractors quoting on our RFPs.
So much for that.
So much for that. Staffing wise, our deputy director has been seconded to the recovery team, and that happened in mid-January. He's a key resource when it comes to helping out with capital budgeting and the tax side of our operating plan, and we will be utilizing him as we can. We backfilled his position in late January, and I'm really happy that we've got Norman Thompson on board now, and he's quickly coming up to speed with getting ready for our year end and other things that we need to do. Our big pain point right now is a part-time grant writer who has been pulled into the ROC as well. So trying to fill that position, because we know grants are going to be really important when it comes to the recovery efforts, but also just the ones that we annually respond to and have to report back on. So we've got some resources potentially in that area, and hopefully have that backfilled in the next little bit here as well to carry on with what we've done there. The volume of transactions when it comes to payroll and accounts payable, that's just doubled up basically over the last 2 or 3 months, and the team's been really working hard, and a lot of strain on the resources there, and they really haven't had much in the way of any breaks to speak of since the flood event. So they've been doing a super job. Call volumes have increased. Our casual resources have been used for recovery efforts and other areas as well. So we are busier than ever at the front. We do have some funding assistance available through emergency operations for helping out with filling in claims and so forth. We're just having a real tough time trying to get those resources. A big shout out though to Carrie Ware. Carrie Ware forwarded on a lead to us there last week, and it looks like we'll have a part-time resource available to assist over the coming months. So reaching out to the local community was useful to drum up some leads. We've got a big backlog of claims. We're only about 30% of the $4.5 million that we've spent so far on the response effort has been submitted. So we've got a big backlog there that we need to get in. So that's one focus area. And casual finance clerks, we're down to 1 casual right now. So we've got a posting out there. Trying to get somebody on that side has been difficult, but we'll continue to work on that. We have an IT contractor that has been super over the last 3 months, maintaining our system, setting up the response centers, tearing down response centers, setting up other facilities. But we are looking at some options to provide some on-the-ground resource support for that individual. Aaron Dimitrition is our IT support contractor. The budget and timeline, and I know a lot of you get questions, and you have your own questions about when is this going to be out there, what are our tax rate increases, what kind of capital are we going to do, and I'd love to be able to provide you that answer today, but I just want to go through here what the timeline will be for capital and operating in this kind of an extraordinary year here. So prior to, again, the November 15th flooding, we were pretty close with the capital budget. We had scaled it down from 2021. We included projects on there that we could fund through reserves and not have to rely on grants and run into the situation like we did with Vote Street, and where we didn't get the grant, we didn't do anything. So we took the approach this year going into it that we were going to split Vote Street into 2 phases. First phase that went from the end from Blackwell up to Grimmett, and then the second phase from Grimmett to River Ranch. So where our plan was that the first phase would be funded through reserves, and then we would go for grant funding for the second phase. So we could at least get going on the first phase. What's likely going to happen now is we're going to need to probably pull the second phase, and as Mr. Smith mentions here that if we do get funding and we are able to pull it back in again, we could through an amendment, but likely at this point, unless something comes up before April 19th, is that it wouldn't be included on the capital plan, and then we would look to maybe pull it back in if we could. So those are the decisions that have to be made. It's going to be some tough choices in 2022 when it comes to capital. So we're right now working with the management team. I've met with most of them to go through the capital plan for 2022, keeping it to pretty much basic infrastructure update requirements, and pulling in the recovery stuff. That'll be the big question mark right now, is the 2022 recovery projects. What's funded, what's not funded, and pulling that into the capital list for you to look at. On the operating side, the budget here is going to incorporate both general operations for the city and also the recovery operations center, which will be funded and in some cases not funded. So there'll be a line item for the Recovery Operations Center. And they've been actively pursuing grants to cover that disaster financial assistance stuff that's not covered, the 20% that on projects will not be covered by disaster financial assistance. We get 80%, but we're looking for that, so there's been grants and requests out there already on that, and we'll continue on with that. So we're hopeful that by the end of March or early April, we, as in finance, will have an idea when we put the budget together of what we are or aren't going to receive in the way of funds for 2022. So after a couple of tough budget cycles when it comes to recreation with COVID, we're hopeful that 2022 on the operating side will at least see some improvements with recreation programs and, you know, increased utilization of parks and facilities and those sort of things. So on a bright side, I'm hopeful that that's going to be there, and working with Sky on the recreation budget, I'm hopeful that he'll be able to include a lot of that in the plan as well. So even with the flooding, there's been a ton of interest in development at the city, so that has not slowed down. We've got multiple plans and bylaw updates that are going to be included in the plan for operations. And some of these will be funded by grants, probably about half of them will be funded by grants, but others may not be. So if we want to continue to sustain development and have some plans in place for future grant applications, there'll be some decisions on what to do there. The final page is the proposed budget timeline, and in yellow are some tentative dates. I've not scheduled at this point, but we'll need to talk about at some point here to move along. The process will start with a Finance and Audit Committee meeting. The columns to the right there, finance timeline, is basically when the finance team needs to have something done to get to Greg to get into an agenda so that it's ready for you in the meeting and in advance of the meeting. And then statutory deadlines on the far right are deadlines that the province puts in place or other bodies put in place. And they're in red because none of those can be moved. I have asked if any of those can be moved, and basically none of those can be moved. So we're plugging along here. Finance and Audit Committee meeting.
But the ones in yellow can be moved?
Those ones have not been booked yet, so it's really, we need to schedule those dates.
April 26th and 27th is our SILGA conference, and it's supposed to be an in-person conference of this year.
Okay.
At this meeting, barring COVID. So those dates, now the 26th could, I don't know. I don't know what time they start on the 26th.
Yeah, we'll look in these in more detail, and I wasn't looking at every single other conflict that might be out there, but I'm just throwing those out there now. There are the ones that aren't highlighted are regularly scheduled meetings that we already have in place. But definitely we can look at the timeline around that. This is...
And I hope you look at my schedule. I've got 25th busy and May 3rd busy as well, so May 9th is okay. Plug that in.
Okay. We've got a keeper. May 9th. Okay.
Sorry,
so
it's only 1 out of 5.
That's one.
Out of 6, 5, 2, 4, 5.
So barring the dates, the process here, so Finance and Audit Committee meeting, looking at early approvals for 2022 capital. So you've approved one today. I appreciate that. And then we'll look at a handful of other ones there that other departments would like to see get into the approval stage before we get a approved financial plan. And we'll also bring forward some staffing. If there are any staffing requests or changes of positions or moves from here to there and that sort of thing, bring that forward as well, so that if we need to make any hiring decisions and those sort of things, that we can get some kind of approval on that, or at least bring that forward to you to consider. So bring that from the Finance and Audit Committee meeting to the next available council meeting, which would be March 8th, for everyone to consider at that time these early projects and or staffing issues. We're hopeful that a completed tax roll will be available from BC Assessment by the end of March. That will include the impacted properties from the 2021 flood. Since the flood occurred in November, BC Assessment had provided their completed roll at the end, as of the end of October, but they are going out and they are reassessing all of these properties that were impacted. So the revised roll that we get, which is the one we use for our tax rates, should be available by the end of March. And if not, I should be able to get some information, at least from BC Assessment, on how that's going to impact our completed roll that was sent out earlier.
Did I hear you say anything about the new assessments on the affected properties?
Those will be part of the revised roll that I'm hopeful to have to us by the end of March. If not, it's kind of the first week or two of April that the revised roll comes out, which will include the impact on those affected properties. So we'll have a true representation of what the assessed values are for the city of Merritt.
Thank you. And the private individual does not have to contact BC Assessment. They are looking at this overall based on the information we've given, right?
There's been a couple of things that have happened. We provided information to BC Assessment, but they did include in there, with their assessment notice, a letter in there that if you did have a concern with relation to the flood, that you were supposed to contact BC Assessment by January 31st in order to be part of that reassessment process. So yes, we did. We didn't advertise that we had provided that to BC Assessment because we don't want people to make assumptions, because that was a list of Zone 4 properties. They may have been added to Zone 4 at a later date, and we just wanted to make sure that it was really the individual that was going to BC Assessment, although they were proactive putting letters in those assessment notices. So people should have been contacting, and they should be working together on that.
For those that don't live here and a home address out of Merritt Post Office box, it may prove to be a little bit awkward.
There may be situations where they weren't caught in the process, but we tried to make sure there was a bit of a duplication there.
Okay, thank you.
So the plan is for the April 19th meeting to have the first review of the draft 2022 to 2026 financial plan and the tax rates as well. So you'd have an understanding what the 2022 tax rates would look like with that financial plan in place. So that really is the first time that we will be presenting anything that represents potential increases to the tax rate as a result of that plan that's put forward for you to look at.
Can I interrupt for a sec? We have Councillor Etcher with a question and answer, or a question comment. What? No?
Not the one. I think I forgot one of the comments. Sorry. Yeah, I'll come back to it.
To get it to the public open house, which 27th of April or thereabouts, we want to make sure that the plan goes through at least the first reading through council. So there's a week in there roughly to revise things as a result of that first draft, and then do a first reading on the plan, and then go to public hearing, or public open house, pardon me, to highlight some of the capital projects and other things that we want to highlight in an open house format. Prior years we've done the survey. It's just not feasible this year to be able to put a survey together, online survey for the 22 plan. Based on the feedback of the open house, to go forward with a financial plan for second and third reading around the first week of May, and special council meeting if required. I've got May 9th there, but that's just really an opening that there could potentially be another meeting where we scrub the budget up and go through 3 more readings all in one sitting. So even though there's a first reading, a second and third reading, there still is a timeline in there where we can do a totally revised financial plan and tax rate bylaw, 3 readings prior to adoption. So there's not a lot of slack in this plan, but there is a little bit at the end there. So a lot of it's really the fact that we are so far behind as a result of the flood, and it's been 3 months of not working on this process. But the recovery stuff is really the wild card here, because we need a bit of that information to be able to put a reasonable plan forward, and we're just hopeful that we get some of that information in March, early April at the worst.
If we look at February 25th date, I've got 3 councillors that won't make it. Myself, Councillor Christopherson, and Councillor Etcher. Finance. That 24th in the morning works for me.
We'll send out
we'll send out surveys and confirm
Okay.
dates. Don't worry about the dates that are on here. We will make sure that we can coordinate with you guys and find the best dates.
Good, thank you.
So after the third reading then, the approval of the audited financial statements would need to take place at the latest, and they need to be adopted by May 12th. We have a May 10th council meeting, but they need to be adopted by May 12th and submitted to the province by Friday, May 13th. So even though we say May 15th, that is a statutory deadline, but we're not sending it out on a Sunday. It's actually the Friday before that. Somebody changed my dates on that, I think. Anyway, the LGDE forms need to be completed and bylaws submitted as well. That's May 13th, but that needs to be done.
LGDE?
Local Government Data Exchange, where all municipalities go in and enter information off their financial statements, plus provide adopted copies of the financial plan and tax rate bylaw. So that all needs to be submitted in one big package to the province. And then they use that for, there's an LGDE site that you can go to get information on all municipalities' spending by function and so forth. And that's a requirement to get that in by that date. The
Which is really the Friday, not the Sunday.
The tax, property tax notice is there. We will look to produce those the week of May 22nd with a due date of, and somebody's changed my date on that one again, possibly. July 4th is actually the due date. It is the first day after the 2nd of July. So if July 2nd falls on a weekend, then it's the first day after, and I believe July 2nd is a Saturday.
Yep.
So it is July 4th is the
Which is
due
unchanged
date.
in there, so it's July 4th.
And the property tax payment deadline or penalty date is July 5th. And the tax sale is September 26th. So that's just kind of a lay of the land on the process for budgeting and dates that we need to adhere to in order to meet our statutory requirements.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Anderson? Seeing none, this is just an information item, so we don't need to approve anything on that, and we have come to the end of our meeting. Thank you very much. This meeting is terminated.